are here taking your tweets, of course, at hashtag GMFB. Bill Belichick at the podium in Foxborough, bringing you now.
As there always are with our team and every other team in the league. This is one piece of the puzzle. It's one part of the process. But there's no game scheduled in May. So we'll continue to evaluate our team, all aspects of it. New players, new veteran players, new rookie players, existing players, players that will eventually come on the team from some other source at some point, as they always do, or have in the past every year. So we'll just go through that process and take it as it comes. But it's an exciting time to be involved in the team building. We'll certainly add a number of names, players to our team in the next 2 weekends. So, in the neighborhood of 20 players, whatever it ends up being. And that'll be a big chunk of players. We'll see how it goes. And I'm sure there'll be other parts of the team building as we go through the year. So happy to take any questions relative to the draft and do the best I can to help you with those. Also, I'd say this year's been probably a year where we've there are always players in New England, but I'd say more players closer to home this year. Steve, BC, have done a great job of building that program, acquiring talent over there. They have a number of players, UConn, UMass, Holy Cross, Maine. A lot of New England schools have guys that are going to be, I would say, factors in the draft at one time or another. And so it's good to see that. It's made some local scouting. It's made that a little bit easier. Not easy, but traveling's easier. So not totally different, but it's good group in this area this year.
Reference some of those guys who, for whatever reason, didn't play last year, health, whatever. With the understanding that every year is different, how do you balance their situations with some of your perceived draft needs heading into later?
Yeah, well, again, the whole draft need thing is, I don't really understand that. I mean, you put a card up on the board, that doesn't mean the guy's a good player. So I think it's important to acquire good players, and wherever they are. And if you take a player at a position that you like so-called need, but he's not good enough to fill that need, then it's a wasted pick. So I don't understand the whole need thing. I understand player value, and that's what we try to go by.
Bill, do you anticipate drafting a quarterback based on Tom Brady's age and asking?
No, we'll do what's best for the football team. We'll look at our opportunities and do what's best.
How much longer do you anticipate he'll play?
Yeah, again, I'm happy to answer the draft questions. I'm not going to get into everything else here.
Specifically, the two guys last year that you drafted, your top two guys, Derek and Antonio, they didn't play for different reasons. Do you almost look at them as like tack on 2 extra guys to this year's draft class?
Yeah, as I said, the players always, almost always, pretty much without exception, improve from year 1 to year 2. Some players had very little production in year 1. Guys like Trey Flowers, James White, Tom. There are a number of players that fall into that category. We have players this year that were on the roster last year that didn't have a lot of production. We'll see how it goes this year. I don't know.
Bill, you mentioned that you guys have a lot more draft capital this year, and as opposed to last year when you traded away several picks for more established players. How do you guys?
And the year before.
Sure. So how do you go about deciding what course you want to take in regards to?
We evaluate the players in the draft, and we look at our opportunities, and as those opportunities come closer, we evaluate what our options are and try to do what we feel like's best. Whether that's stay and pick a player, move up for a player, move back, and trade into next year. We've traded draft picks for players on the day of the draft. We did that last year. So whatever the opportunities are, we'll evaluate them as they come, do what we think's best.
Coach, because you're so good at assessing the value of players in drafts, I mean, when you specifically look at this group, we've seen you out on the road coaching these guys up. What impresses you about this incoming class specifically?
Yeah, we still have, I'd say we still have some work to do here. We're a couple weeks away. I think we've accumulated, let's call it 99% of the information, 98% of the information. And now we really have to go back and kind of fine tune that, which it's a little easier to do when you have all the information. So you're not sitting there talking about, well, these two guys, but we really need to find out more about this guy before we can make that comparison. I think we're approaching that point now. So when we get into early next week and we finalize some of the, like for example, this weekend is the medical recheck in Indianapolis. So that'll affect some players. Some will get cleared up, some may not get cleared up. So again, to try to make that evaluation today with information outstanding, it's kind of a waste of time because you have to go back and do it again when new information comes in, especially when you know it's coming. So our process is kind of to get to that point, call it a week before the draft, pretty much have all the information in. There may be one or two morsels out there, but for the most part that's in, and then start to spend probably the better part of that next week really trying to fine-tune our valuations. And so I won't say it's easy, but I'd say it's relatively easy to take the guards and rank them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or take the corners and rank them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you start talking about the third guard and the second corner, the third guard and the eighth corner, or however those grades line up. Or you're talking about players that are specialty type players, that are role players, that are maybe are very good at a certain role, but they're not three-down players. What are their values relative to other players who maybe are three-down players, but at a lesser skill set and so forth? That's where it kind of gets tricky putting the whole board together. Not saying it's easy to rank the players in position in order, but that's a lot easier than trying to compare players at different positions, at different levels, guys who have played 3-4 years at high-level conferences, against the best players in college football versus other players who have played at lesser levels but are ascending players that are very talented players, and trying to project how those values match up. So that's where it gets that's the hard part really. Is
the positions don't necessarily just jump out at you. It's more.
Well, again, we've pretty much seen all the players. Again, the players that pop up now aren't players that are popping up in the second round. They're players that maybe weren't draftable, or we graded as not draftable players, and maybe the player is draftable, or maybe we have a player that's draftable, and then as we grind through it and all, this is really more of a free agent. I wouldn't say the guy comes from, a guy we've never heard of to being a second-round pick. I'm not really talking about that, but there is some fluctuation based on new information. So we continue to just assemble the information, try to make sure we know each player thoroughly, put a grade on them. But we have a number of players that have the same number grades. And then there are other factors that we, for one reason or another, put one player ahead of another. And so that's, I'd say, the upcoming process. So.
It's Coach Bill Belichick right there, entering his 19th season as the head coach up in Foxborough, preparing for the draft. What I learned from that is there are no games in May. He did say that, and he also said, we kind of snickered when asked about Brady.
Yeah, he definitely didn't want to
Talk about the draft, he said.
Yeah, he definitely wanted to address the fact of how much longer he thought Brady was going to play, which I thought was key. But then also, he said that we're going to do whatever is best for the team when asked if they would draft a quarterback. So to me, that says that they're definitely open to it, and that they're obviously going to make the best decision, for them, and regardless of if Brady gets mad, like we've been talking about.
Anything stick out to you?
Yeah, 23rd and 31st pick is a different year for them in the draft. They're not sitting there at 32 and trading back down. I think they actually might be movers and shakers, and I feel like the fact that he's been at these pro days and been so active running the drills, he's seen these guys firsthand. He always knows the players, but now he kind of has that personal interaction. I think they're going to be very interesting come draft, which is another wrinkle to an already awesome draft.
Love that. Up next, he is a two-time national champ with the Crimson Tide. Bama safety Ronnie Harrison joins us live